If you've been following my channel for a while now, you would know that the Search for the Worst cartoon is my flagship series. A series where I go through all kinds of bad cartoons, infamous cartoons, obscure cartoons. It doesn't matter. If it's bad, I'm talking about it, in order to find the worst cartoon ever made. And I'm sure some of you are wondering, how did I come up with such a series? And so I figured it wouldn't hurt to make a quick video going over the origins of the Search for the Worst cartoon. Our story begins all the way back around the late 2010s, around early 2017 or so. I remember early 2017, I was extremely sick. I guess it was just the season, I'm not sure. It wasn't anything serious, relax. I had like a cold and that was it. And so naturally, when you're a sick teenager, you're just scrolling through YouTube on your phone, trying to find a way to entertain yourself as much as possible in order to forget about the fact that you are sick, in order to forget about the fact that you have to spend all day in your room doing nothing. And so one day in early 2017, while I was sick, I got recommended an, at the time, fairly recent video: the Fred movie trilogy, The Search for the Worst, I Hate Everything. As soon as I saw this video in my recommendations, the flashbacks came in of when I was a stupid kid who watched these movies. I don't know if I'm ashamed or proud to admit that I own the f***ing Fred movies on DVD, all three of them. And so I decided to watch this video to relive some interesting childhood memories, and that's when I started to watch I Hate Everything, my biggest YouTube inspiration. Now, I Hate Everything had a series called The Search for the Worst, where he would go over different movies, bad movies, in order to find the worst movie ever made. Sometimes he would look at infamous movies like The Room or Birdemic or Food Fight, that sort of thing. Other times, he would look at incredibly obscure movies, such as Robot Monster or The Bat People. And then sometimes he would cover certain movies on this series, and they would become infamous in part because of his reviews on these movies, such as Cool Cat Saves the Kids or The Amazing Bulk. It didn't take long before I became obsessed with this guy and his videos, mainly The Search for the Worst. The basic premise was that I Hate Everything would go over all of these different bad movies in order to try and find the worst movie ever made. Not only would he review these movies, but he would also rank them from best to worst, which I thought made this series more unique and interesting. Besides the fact that the videos were funny and well made, the fact that there was a ranking system. This wasn't just, oh, he just looks at bad movies and that's it. The fact that he manually ranks all of these movies, I guess it made me more into these videos. Like, I didn't just look at this as being, it's your average movie review series on YouTube. I'm not sure what it was. The fact that he ranked these movies made it more interesting to me. Practically every day throughout like 2017, 2018, I would watch one of these videos. I found these videos to be insanely rewatchable. I would always get excited whenever a new episode would come out. And then the following year, in 2018, I officially started making YouTube videos. Now I think almost every YouTuber has this like little phase for when they start making YouTube videos where they don't really take it all that seriously. They don't make like amazing, life-changing videos with tons of effort and hard work put into them. They just make like, kind of low-effort, goofing off sort of videos. I'm sure there are tons of YouTube channels that start off that way, where they just make, kind of low-effort crap content. But you know what? They think it's funny, they love it, and I was no exception to that. My early videos from 2018 were not exactly all that good. At the time, I just looked at YouTube as being like, yeah, it was a stupid side thing that I could do. Obviously, much later on, I would start to take it more and more seriously. In 2018, I looked at this as being a stupid side thing that I would do for fun, and in 2025, this is now my main priority, making YouTube videos. But even with, the kind kind of low effort crap content that I was putting out throughout 2018, I would still go back to I Hate Everything's videos. I would still go back to the search for the worst. And it's like, I look at these videos and it's like, I want to make something like that. I want to be able to create something akin to this, something similar to this, you know? I don't know when it'll happen, but one day I want to make something on par with this. I want to make something, you know, akin to this at one point. At one point in early 2019, I was active on YouTube in 2018 and for a little bit in early 2019. However, I was very inactive on YouTube in 2019. I don't know why, I just kind of was. It wouldn't be until 2020 with the pandemic where I would start making videos again, although it would be a very slow process, but I would start putting out more videos in 2020. I'd say it wouldn't be until 2022 where I would finally start to take YouTube a lot more seriously and I would start to upload videos at a faster pace. But anyways, it's 2019, and because at the time I was a dumb teen and I kept watching all of these videos from this one guy, an idea came up in my head to make a series akin to I Hate Everything's The Search for the Worst, but with one big difference. I would be focusing on cartoons instead of movies. I remember I had a very old video that I made in early 2019 that acted as a sort of trailer for this series where I went over, like, you know, what I planned on doing for the show, making it clear that yeah, I was inspired by I Hate Everything to make this series. I wanted to do what I Hate Everything was doing with movies, except I wanted to do it with cartoons, because at the time I believe that, like, you know, everyone always talks about, like, what's the worst movie ever made. They say, like, oh, The Room, Food Fight, Birdemic, whatever. People say, like, what's the worst video game ever made. They say, like, Superman 64, Big Rigs, E.T., Sonic 06, whatever. And then, like, when it came to cartoons, when it came to, like, worst cartoons ever made, it's like, I felt like that wasn't a topic that was frequently touched upon when compared to worst movies or worst video games. And whatever cartoons people would say are like the worst ever made, I looked at them and I thought, okay, I'm not saying they're good, but I don't think these are like worst cartoon ever made material. Like, this was around the time, the late 2010s, this was around the time when everyone really hated Teen Titans Go. If you were in the animation community during this time, you would know that Teen Titans Go was public enemy #1 amongst the animation community. And as someone who never grew up with the original 2003 series and didn't really care about it all that much, and I still kind of don't care about it all that much either. I'm sure it's a great show, but like, I don't know, I'm just not all that interested in it. But I've also never taken time to, like, care about Teen Titans Go. I think I watched it at some point, like a few episodes, and I thought, okay, this wasn't very funny, but, like, you know, I didn't see any reason to get, like, super angry at it. But even back during the peak era of the show's hatred, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, this wasn't exactly worst cartoon ever made material. I knew there had to be crap out there that was significantly worse than this, for sure. And so the search for the worst cartoon was born. Well, okay, it wouldn't be born just yet, but I guess this was the early stages of the pregnancy. I'm not sure. For lack of a better term, I don't know. Now, in a lot of the older Search for the Worst episodes that I Hate Everything would put out, he would include, like, this wheel at the end to decide what would be the next movie covered on the series. What would be the next movie that he would review. And when I made this video, when I made this trailer, I was like, yeah, I wanted to include this wheel in order to determine what would be the first cartoon covered on the series. And lo and behold, it ended up being Alan Gregory, the short-lived 2011 Jonah Hill Fox cartoon that we all know and love, maybe, I don't know. In an alternate universe, we probably love it. It didn't take long before I started work on a video going over Alan Gregory. I had this video come out at some point in early 2019, around, like, I think maybe like April or May of 2019, I don't remember. I upload the video, it gets taken down because of copyright. And I don't know why, but I guess I just looked at that and I thought, oh damn, I guess I can't go forward with this series. And that was it for a very long time. I just left it like that, abandoned. And so fast forward to 1 year later, it's early 2020, we're in the early era of the pandemic, and I just randomly remember this old video that I made going over this short-lived Fox cartoon from 2011 that people say is like a bad cartoon. And I remember the video got taken down because of copyright, and so I decided, you know what, no, I'm going to re-upload this video. I'm gonna like fix a few things, I'm gonna change a few things about it, and I will upload it onto YouTube. And so I did. Now at the time, I didn't really care for continuing the search for the worst cartoon. I was like, yeah, I'll just upload this video as a one-off thing. I gave the video the title of Jonah Hill's Terrible 2011 Fox Cartoon. I had a completely different thumbnail. I had like nothing to indicate that, yeah, this was like search for the worst cartoon related. This was something inspired by I Hate Everything's The Search for the Worst. Nothing like that. And for a long time, this was where things ended off. I uploaded this Alan Gregory video, and that was it. It was a one-off thing. I never intended to make more videos on it. I never intended to make more videos covering these bad cartoons. It stayed like that throughout the remainder of 2020, and for the entirety of 2021 and 2022. And then we fast forward into 2023. Now, I'm sure most of you remember this. At the very beginning of 2023, there would be a little cartoon that would come out called Velma. And let me tell you something. I had not seen a cartoon get this much hate, this much ridicule online in a long time. It was incredible to me at the time how unanimously despised this thing was. And I'm not gonna lie, it made me interested to bring back this series. It made me interested to be like, yeah, you know what, I want to make this thing. I want to bring back this old thing that I did because of how much people hate on this show. It just made me think of like all the potential garbage cartoons that came out in between when I made that Alan Gregory video. Well, more specifically, when I re-uploaded that Alan Gregory video in 2020, we're not counting the original 2019 upload, and early 2023, when Velma came out, and it made me think, you know what, I should bring back this series, why not? This was also around the time where I discovered a very strange, obscure internet web series that I guarantee you none of y'all had heard of until I made videos on it. I'm sure most of you watching this remember Sam and Cat from Nickelodeon. Well, this show had a web series counterpart that is extremely obscure. I don't remember how or when I found out about the existence of this thing, but as soon as I did, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta make a video on this. And then I decided to put 2 and 2 together, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna have this be episode 2 of the search for the worst cartoon. It's officially coming back, baby. If you watch these 2 videos, I think it's gonna be very obvious that, yeah, there's a pretty big difference in terms of quality between the 2 videos. You're gonna notice a huge difference between my style of video making in 2019/2020 versus my style of video making in 2023. And so, throughout 2023, up to the present day, I've been making videos going over all kinds of terrible cartoons, infamous cartoons, obscure cartoons, controversial in the sense that I consider them worst cartoon ever made material, just all kinds of different bad cartoons in order to find the worst cartoon ever made. And on several occasions, I have found shows that I think fit the criteria of being the worst cartoon ever made. Because of I Hate Everything, I started taking YouTube a lot more seriously. I started deciding, you know what, I want to make actual proper videos. Because of I Hate Everything, I have a YouTube career, and I cannot express enough how grateful I am for I Hate Everything and his videos, especially with the search for the worst. I know that, like, I don't want this to come off as being, like, weird or parasocial or anything like that. I'm trying to keep this as a normal sort of appreciation, but I really am grateful for I Hate Everything. I know some of you are going to accuse me of ripping off his Serious, but in all fairness, I do remember back when I was, like, in the developing stages for this series, I wanted to try and think of, like, alternate different names into, like, you know, to make it feel less like a ripoff. Unfortunately, I couldn't think of any, so I had to stick with Search for the Worst Cartoon. I'm sorry. I gotta be honest, most of the time when I reference this show, I just say, this serious, you know? I don't say, this is the worst cartoon covered on the Search for the Worst Cartoon. I say, this is the worst cartoon I've ever covered on this serious, because admittedly, I do get a little bit uncomfortable when I say the Search for the Worst Cartoon name, just because I'm just doing what a more successful YouTuber has done. And even though I was inspired by his videos to make my videos, it still just kind of rubs me the wrong way, you know? I'm not gonna stop making these videos or anything like that. I'm still gonna keep making them. I think this series has enough of an identity to separate it from I Hate Everything's very own Search for the Worst. And to be honest, I don't see the harm in having a similar series exist that tackles cartoons instead of movies. Especially given the fact that, again, the idea of the worst cartoon ever made isn't really as talked about when compared to the worst movie ever made or the worst video game ever made. I find it extremely unlikely that I Hate Everything will ever come across this channel, and again, I don't want this to come off as being, like, weird or parasocial or anything like that, but I just want to say anyways, thank you, I Hate Everything, for being the reason why I make YouTube videos. You know, you think about how, like, in the late 2000s, early 2010s, you had all those channels that were like, oh, I want to be just like Angry Video Game Nerd, I want to be just like the Nostalgia Critic, you know? You know, there's probably tons of people on YouTube that started reviewing games because of the Angry Video Game Nerd, they started reviewing movies because of the Nostalgia Critic, that sort of thing. And it's like, with me, it's like, I want to make these videos because of I Hate Everything and his Search for the Worst Serious. I might be to I Hate Everything what Irate Gamer was to Angry Video Game Nerd, but you know what? So be it. So be it. I'm just grateful for I Hate Everything, and not even just, like, inspiring me to make YouTube videos, but also, like, you know, his videos are hilarious, they're well made, they're well edited. I'm very well aware that my videos are a lot more amateur in comparison, but I think the amateurity kind of allows for this series to be more different from I Hate Everything's own series, so you know, there's that as well. It ends up being an advantage. I'm not sure what else there is for me to say, honestly. Thank you, I Hate Everything, for being the reason why I make YouTube videos. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios.